Chadillac. I am representing, I have my Future Farmers of America Agricultural Education t-shirt on. I'm representing.
I'm Miguel on the Cage Rage podcast, representing the International Brotherhood of Prize Fighting.
Hey, this is Chadillac with the Cage Rage podcast, and I am less dwarfish today than normal. I'm here with your host in his Hollanda soccer team shirt. Guest host, fight analyst, archivist, Miguel Iterati. What's going on today, Miguel? How you doing?
Glad to be back, Chad. We're talking more MMA, and we're straying away from the UFC subject, something that, maybe we ought to do more of. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we ought to, but I think before we stray away from that, I think we should point out a couple more important things to the Cage Rage podcast viewer that are extremely important. Number one, I'm bringing back FFA. It's important, es muy importante for you Spanish-speaking human beings out there watching us. I am a lifetime member of FFA. That is for Future Farmers of America. I'm an agriculture guy, getting ready to start an agriculture organic farm in the very near future. I do not play soccer, but I do grow all types of products, including hemp. I grow hemp, just like George Washington did. And I don't have any pants on. How about that? What do you got to say about that, Miguel?
Well, Chad and I have very little in common, other than that I, too, am not wearing pants.
Woo!
It's experiencing a little bit of freedom here on the Cage Rage podcast, you know what I mean? But so let's just get right into it. I don't think people need to know much more. Just think about it.
Our balls were hot.
Did we talk to Ball Wash? Have you seen Ball Wash? Because Ball Wash is everywhere right now. You could go to CNN's website
big deal.
And see Keep Your Jewels Jolly advertising for the Ball Wash. So it's everywhere.
So it's got kind of a holly jolly Christmas feel to it.
It is. It tells you it clean
happy.
Your balls, butt, and body.
It's festive.
So anyway.
So first and foremost, we've got the Golden Boy stuff going on. Chuck and Tito. Here's the deal with Chuck and Tito so far. I have a 15-year-old video of Tito and I having a conversation about him talking shit about Chuck before they ever fought. I'm still trying to find it, and let me show you. This is what I haven't gone through yet. Out of the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of video, which, by the way, all of that will be downloaded onto the Cage Rage Podcast YouTube channel very soon. So you can go on there and you can just check out fights all the time for free. All you want. It'll be totally awesome, and you'll be able to check out those like crazy as long as you subscribe. So click subscribe, and then you'll be able to go and check out thousands of fights. Old school, new school, crazy, bizarre stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Things like you can't even believe are on there. Stuff that shouldn't be on there, including fecal stuff that's just absolutely disgusting. So anyways, speaking of disgusting, Chuck and Tito are going to fight again for the third time. I'm not sure why, because Chuck beat the shit out of Tito twice. Apparently Chuck, who was an accountant and was supposed to be very frugal with his money, wasn't so frugal after all. And Tito claims to be doing Chuck a favor by getting him this fight with Golden Boy. There is supposedly $300 million on the line. I haven't seen anything to substantiate that, but that's the rumor. I don't believe it. But that is what's being said. And Tito is taking no purse, only shares in the pay-per-view that So he's going to make minus $12 on this, and I'm sure Chuck is taking the purse because he's smarter than that. So where do we go from there? We've talked about him till we're blue in the face on all the other stuff. We're really left with talking about the legacy of what happens to a fighter when he's too goddamn old to fight, but he's too poor not to. And, you know, we cover this a lot in the historicity of boxing. When we talk about our boxing legacy stuff, we see it all the time. And we're finally to a point in MMA where we're seeing it all the time. Fighters too old to fight, and they're still fighting. Take it from there, Miguel.
Yeah, I think the more interesting aspect, because we already beat that to death in the other podcast we did. You can check that out because we talked in depth about the geriatric nature of this main event and what's going on here. Golden Boy's gotten criticized a little bit because they're really riding Liddell and Tito's names. In terms of the undercard they're offering is lukewarm. I mean, there's some good fights on it for people that really follow the sport, but it really is a one-man show here that they're offering. So it's not like the pay-per-view dollars. You're getting a full stacked card of fights that you wouldn't see anywhere else kind of thing. The rest of the average of the card is very average and maudlin. You know what I mean? So they're firmly hanging their hats on the Chuck and Ortiz thing. And I personally think this is a mistake. But here, the $300 million, let's just be clear about it. The $300 million is I believe, the net worth of Golden Boy and Oscar De La Hoya. So that's the war chest they can put behind the fight. But that's not what, the fight's going to generate or anything like that. Although Oscar De La Hoya checked in this weekend and stated that this is going to be Chuck and Tito's biggest payday in their career. So that's the answer right there as to why they're going to be doing it. I don't know what the exact dollar figure is, but Oscar does have a lot of experience with revenue share from his boxing days into promoting days. He considers himself, in most of his speeches, consider himself very pro-fighter, and he is doing a good deal here for Chuck and Tito. I think the fighters are motivated because they want to do well for him. I'm not sure it's not ill-fated. When you come in like Oscar, the UFC has to watch Oscar and think, this guy's coming from boxing, but he's a real guy, But they're not exactly helping him, right? Maybe they let him use Chuck where they could have blocked it or made motion about it, but they're letting the fight happen. But that's it. Oscar's going to have to sell this on pay-per-view. You are, and it's going to be interesting to see if it really does generate the kind. If it sells 2.5 million pay-per-views, everybody's going to go home very happy. I'm not sure it has the potential to.
Okay, well, if the UFC was doing anything to help Oscar, then we would see all kinds of stuff about. We would see all of the previous fights of Chuck and Tito and video collages and all that. We're not seeing any of that. So the UFC's, they blocked the idea that you're going to be able to use all of our video footage. So they're not doing any of that. What they are doing is they're going, yeah, Chuck, we kind of owe you. We know we kind of, we rode your back for a long time and barely paid you anything. And, back then we could get away with that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to let somebody else pay you the money we should have paid you. And I think that's pretty much where it stops with that as far as I'm concerned. I might be wrong on that, but it feels like that's what that's about. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, you don't want to begrudge the guys. They're in their 40s, and like I said, I wish there was some mechanism that somebody would just step in and say no. But it's taking a big payday out of the guys. Here's the thing: it's a big payday. They could. Are they really going to, they're in their 40s now, are they really going to set themselves up for life? Because if it is a payday of a couple $1 million, are they going to buy a piece of land, build themselves a house, have it paid off, maybe set up an academy, a business or something like that? I mean, Tito maybe more than Chuck is capable of doing something like that. But it can't be like, a payday. Money doesn't justify watching warm shit. And this is what this fight is going to be because they're so old. So they're selling this nostalgia, and it really isn't worth it. So what's going to happen is, I look at it this way. Okay, Golden Boy comes in. They want to try MMA. This is their idea. They remember, the original Chuck fights from 10 years ago with Tito. And, it made an impact on them. They were amazingly produced fights, from the UFC. It was really the UFC stepping out onto a big stage. So it impacted De La Hoya to the point where he feels that he's got the right fight here to make his first step into this sport. My problem with it is I don't see any way that MMA as a concept, as a sport, benefits from this.
I don't either. And here's the other thing. The first two fights weren't any good. They weren't any good.
There were some compelling moments, I mean, here's the deal
name two moments in the total of 3.5 rounds we got in the first two fights. I don't remember how long they went. Not very long. I think the first one was 1.5 rounds and the second one was 2.5 rounds. Is that right? Chuck won every moment of them, other than maybe, Tito maybe got a takedown or something, but I don't even recall that at this point.
I remember Tito wasting a lot of energy trying to hurt Chuck, not breaking through. A lot of not efficient fighting from him. And then when Chuck came in, Chuck was able to seal the deal. So I don't think there was that feeling of like a story that was unfinished behind this fight. So I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not sure Oscar picked the right fight, but he's got name recognition. People know that. What worries me is if you're not an MMA fan and you're going to pay money for this, are you going to leave it an MMA fan?
No.
Or are you going to feel like,
absolutely not.
That felt like a Mayweather pay-per-view, like I just got ripped off.
Yep, you're just going to feel like, and I was trying to check and see how much the actual pay-per-view cost to buy this. I mean, but I'm guessing it's got to be $50, right? At least $39.95, but whatever the average is now.
$40, $50, something around there. I do think Oscar De La Hoya, in his recent statement, stated that with Golden Boy, they're used to producing pay-per-view events in the $75 to $80 range, and that they're offering this for good value. So they're offering this for less than that. I don't know exactly how much less. I didn't bother to look it up, but they're making an effort. He was asked about whether with the undercard stuff it was worth the pay-per-view. And, he talked about the legends. He did the right thing. I mean, Oscar's a salesman and a promoter.
Right.
So
the translation to that is we've done almost no sales in advance, and we're eating our asses on this. And so we're discounting it as fast as we can to hope we have enough seats sold so that it doesn't look empty and stupid on pay-per-view. That's what that means.
Yeah, I mean, overall, like I said, I don't, in the other earlier podcast, I think Golden Boy's made a mistake here. Now, keep in mind,
definitely,
if you're looking at if you're really watching combat sports, with an analytical point of view, you had Dana White, allow Dana knew Floyd, and they're both Vegas people, so they know each other. And they, if they needed to do a deal, they know who to call. So the potential was always there for the McGregor thing. McGregor recognized that and kind of forced the issue and made people work together and got it done.
Yeah.
So now, after that, you have Dana White making a couple of perfunctory toe dips, in the lake of boxing. And, including the big rumor that hit the media that we talked about here on the podcast was that he made almost a $500 million offer to Anthony Joshua, the world heavyweight champion. But he had to back off, leave the idea aside, because after that, the matchmaking with everybody, boxing, everybody's pretty much chopped up and owned by people already. So it wasn't like he was going to come in and have a full roster and just matchmake his parts to light. He had to really work and cut deals. So now all of a sudden, you saw Dana kind of back out of the boxing idea. I don't think it's done, 100% yet. They may be back in there, but they backed out a little bit. Should Oscar have done the same?
Don't you think this kind of looks? Don't you think this looks an awful lot like, for an analogy, that it looks an awful lot like when Vince McMahon decided to do the XFL? You've got the NFL. They own all the great players. People have tried to come in and do other football leagues a couple of different times, and it just
Including
never.
Our president Donald Trump.
it never works. And it's not going to work because the NFL is the NFL and the UFC is the UFC. And that's just not going to be any other way. It can't be interrupted. So, having said that, I think we pretty much beat that pony to death. I think that the only thing that comes from this is two guys who probably shouldn't be fighting anymore. One guy that's probably going to continue to fight, Tito. If Chuck knocks Tito completely stupid, then maybe Tito rethinks things and decides, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. I don't know. If Tito wins, which I don't see happening, but if he wins, then I think Tito goes on and he goes on a tangent and goes on a tear and he tries to fight some guys and he takes a couple of pretty easy wins to do some pay-per-view draws of some kind to help Golden Boy start to build some type of recognition. But I don't think that happens. I don't think Chuck's interested in any kind of real career in fighting. He doesn't act like he wants to come back and continue to fight. But that's just how I see it, and I could be wrong. So having said that, do you have anything else to say about Chuck and Tito before we wrap that up? And I swear to God, I'm trying really hard to find the video interview from 15 years ago that I did with Tito. If I can't find it, I apologize, and I'm a shithead for forever mentioning it because we can't take it back now. But if we have it, you'll get to see it, and if we can't, then just, write me letters and tell me what an asshole I am. Do you have anything else to say on that before we go on to the next big thing?
No, let's just see it happen. Hopefully both guys have a good night. They put on a show. They don't disappoint. That's the best thing that can happen for them in the sport. I just got a feeling that, in the end of the day, that it is going to be a little bit of a disappointment. MMA fans are pretty intelligent, and they've been looking at a certain type of product. This is outside of that, so I don't know how it's going to be received by the mainstream. I don't know that I can guarantee 1 million pay-per-view sales here, right? So we'll see how they do. I'm interested. The other one we want to talk about non-UFC related, I think, is the Ryan Bader Fedor Emilianenko match that Bellator is putting on. Finally,
that's an actual good fight.
Yeah, there's something about the tournaments that are very compelling. When you got guys that are advancing through a tournament, the final's always a nice story because guys are winning. You know what I mean?
Well, look, here's the most important thing about this. If it were anyone but Fedor, I'd go, at that age, and the comeback and everything, I would say, I don't give a shit about it. It's not that interesting. They need to retire. Fedor with the fluke knockout with Mitrione. I know Matt. He lives 20 miles from where I'm sitting right now in Lafayette, Indiana. We'll have him on the show sometime. He's a nice guy. He's a good Indiana boy. He's a farm boy if ever there was one. And he's a funny, great, lighthearted guy. Fedor got hit and he fell, and that happens. But I don't think that proves that Fedor is the kind of guy who has seen the weather that he just can't take the beating anymore. He doesn't strike me as a punch-drunk, punch-weary kind of weathered fighter in that way. But we're going to see what he's really made of and if he has anything left in the tank when he faces Bader. Because Bader has a lot of real fight left in him. That's a guy that the UFC let go because they just couldn't market him right at that time. And they said, we got to let some of these people go. It's costing us too much money to keep them. And they're forcing the issue with getting fights. And, we can't keep promising fights and then not delivering. They have a legitimate legal bitch here. And so they let Bader go because he didn't fulfill his fight contract, as far as I know. They just dismissed him, right? And
no, I think he was in between and got a chance to move over after rights of first refusal got done and stuff. I think it was something the UFC said, yeah, we're going to let him go. We don't want to pay him, and whatever happened, he takes the other offer. The UFC could have blocked it and done whatever they wanted to, and they didn't.
Yeah, they said we've got guys coming up that are younger, that are like him, but they're a little more marketable. And Bader's, he's on the finishing end of his career. Let's let him go. But Bader is a bad man, and he's a big, strong guy, and he can go out there and give Fedor everything that Fedor can't handle in a lot of different ways. Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I think Bader's an interesting character, and I think, there could be, there's a scenario where he winds up, back with the UFC and in a much better situation than he was in before.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
And here, to me, this is what goes on, right? So you have Bellator signing a bunch of guys up with the intent of doing this tournament. This tournament really is a feature for Fedor. Either it's a last hurrah, or now that he's in the finals and they got kind of what they wanted. If Bader beats him, maybe Bader's the guy. But here's the real question. Bader beats Fedor, wins that tournament. He's already got the light heavyweight belt. He's now the heavyweight champion in Bellator and stuff like that. What else does Bellator have on the roster for this guy? So, with Bader winning the tournament, could he go back to UFC? And has he done enough to raise his stock to become a John Jones opponent?
Oh. Do you really think that Bader can go back and be a legitimate Jones opponent? And do you think Bader can beat Jones?
No, I don't. Put it this way. Here's the deal. I think you got to consider who is John Jones going to fight, right? You've got him fighting Gustafsson. That's a fight that comes with a story from before that they let it go for a little bit and this, that, the other thing. So you can see kind of what they're doing there, right? But if I go back, Bader lost to John Jones back in 2011, and it wasn't, it was something where he made it in the second round and he got guillotined, and it was one of Jones's normal dominant performances. So what's he done since then? Well, he really did leave the UFC on an upswing because he took, he went out on a 6-fight winning streak, and if you consider it, he went out 11-1 with the UFC. The UFC let him go at 11-1.
Wow.
So he had a nice streak with the UFC going, kind of recover into a title shot. Elected to go to Bellator. Now he goes to Bellator, beats Phil Davis, another UFC guy, for the belt, owns the 35-pound belt, goes through a heavyweight tournament to win the 65-pound under belt in Bellator. And now comes back a 2-time champ. Now he comes back to the UFC. Could you match him up right away with John Jones? I think he would take that fight. And that's what you're looking at. A guy who would take the fight. Who could you make a credible opponent? And you could bring Bader back, something like that. Bader put his all into the fight. I don't know.
That is a cool idea. I hadn't even conceived of that.
If he comes back, right, the idea is Bader's been active, Jones hasn't, and stuff like that. If they come back and they've both done the same things and improved since 2011, we'll see the same fight. Jones will win because Jones is better. But there are so many questions about John Jones coming back. And Bader's done nothing but be professional and arc this way, right?
Correct.
His star has been rising. So
yeah, they have a story. At least they have a reason to do it. They can say, Bader has all the reasons. Yep. Well, what about this? What if they need to throw somebody in with DC? Bader could be good for that, right?
Yeah, DC is going to be the next big conflict for the UFC because they got to deliver the Lesnar fight now. DC got the job done with Lewis, so they got to deliver the Lesnar fight now. Every indication says we're going to get that in the March timeframe. And then from there, DC has stated he wants to retire. Now, if he retires, that means he made good money for the Lesnar fight. Now you're talking about older, mature guy. Hopefully he put enough money away. But, man, the next fight, he beats Lesnar. The next fight's going to be an equal payday, right? Something similar to the point where can he stay retired? If the next fight is Jones, then the fight could be even for potentially a bigger payday, right? So can he really say no? But if he does want to say no, and he says, I'm 40, I'm done, I don't want to do it, and he does want to say no, then Jones, you know, is out there opponentless. DC and Jones is the fight, but does Bader fit in to fight the winner of them? If you do that fight, the third fight with DC and Jones, UFC gets what they want. Is bringing back Bader anyway for the winner something that could benefit them?
Okay, so there's our Bader talk, but let's get to the GOAT, and not the bad kind of GOAT, but the GOAT is in the greatest of all time, the last emperor. Let's get to Fedor, the man, my hero. You know, at the Trump Taj Mahal, I got in the elevator with Fedor the first time I met him for Bodog, and I said I had a Cage Rage shirt on, and he said, of course he doesn't speak any English, or he didn't then, but he liked my shirt, and I said, oh, I like yours, and he said, and I kind of didn't get what he was saying, and Rosa was there, and she said he wants to trade you shirts, and I said he can have it right here, and I took it off, and Fedor was like, oh, as it was back when I was, buff, man. Fedor was like, he took his shirt off, and I had Fedor's shirt, and I wore Fedor's shirt off of his back. God damn, that was cool. Some kid in Idaho bought that shirt on eBay off of me. When I sold all of my shirts, I accidentally put that one in the stock, and some kid in Iowa has a shirt that literally came from Fedor. There in that video collection, you'll see me wearing Fedor's shirt in a couple of those fights. Anyway, Fedor is the greatest of all time for a reason, because he's totally awesome in every single way. What do you think? Is he really done? Should he stop, or does he have 3 fights left in him? Does he go? What's he do? Where's this go?
Fedor is in the right place with Bellator, because Bellator is going to work with him. There's certain types of guys I'd avoid with a 40-year-old man. I wouldn't put him in with, like a 25-year-old banger, who's got nothing to lose or anything like that. You want to be careful with him. You want to give him his place. He's a shadow of his former self. The deal with Fedor is you're talking about a guy who physically, when you're talking about guys, in a sport where everybody's looking ripped up and stuff like that, physically he never really impressed people. But I would describe him this way: he's faster than everybody his size bigger, and he's stronger than everybody his size or smaller. Yep. So he was at a perfect mid-size for a heavyweight, where he could handle big guys, and he handled, in Pride, even giants and things like that. In fights that, just because if you're fighting a guy 7 foot something, 400 pounds, things could go wrong in a fight anyway. You know what I mean? So Fedor did some dangerous things outside of what the UFC would call competition, in Pride and things that I think make him the greatest of all time. Being chilled to the level that he brings it at that level. I think Fedor also very much considers himself a representative of Russia and Sambo in his style. So he has traditional, back to him. And I think he was always a smart and cerebral fighter.
Absolutely.
Animal and things like that. And doing a real good job with intimidating and not intimidating. Fedor's a whole different level of intimidation. I'll tell one story of Fedor, because in America now the intimidation is fuck you, I'm gonna kill your family, and like your old trainer like trying to hold you back from fighting in the way. That's all the stuff. And Fedor never needs to even say a word. You know what I mean? And that's what makes it. I remember being with Fedor one time, and we walked in, and I was looking for Vlad, the boss, and they were at the bar. It was Vlad, Vadim, who was Fedor's manager, and Fedor were at a bar, and I walked in. It was just a man sitting at a bar alone, not even drinking. They were just talking at a clothes bar. And I come up and I go, Vlad, behind them. The three of them turn around and I watch Fedor, and I can see Fedor looks at me, and he looked me up and down from head to toe. It was like a scary feeling. Like I could almost picture in his head, like the Terminator, like he did that. He was scared and said, "No danger." It's like that's what he looked at me like. I can almost hear the moisture of his eyes close and open while he did that. He was an intimidating guy without saying a word.
And he's you know, he's not like you said. He wasn't big. He wasn't strong. No, he didn't look strong. He didn't look big. He didn't look like he was going to be this killer. He just had those stone cold eyes. No, you know, he didn't grimace. He didn't do anything. He just, you know, just a solid look, and he was stoic, and it was amazing. Mark Coleman told me one time, and then Randleman joined in, and they both said it after because they both fought Fedor, and in Pride, and they both told me that Fedor. Well, one told me that Coleman said Fedor was the strongest person that he ever fought, and Randleman told me, and I might have that backwards, and Randleman told me that he was the fastest person he'd ever fought. And I might have that backwards, but one said one and one said the other. So, I mean, that says it all right there.
Here's the thing about Fedor. I think Fedor came along at the right time. I think you're talking about a gifted athlete, and I think that gets overlooked. I think exactly for what we talked about, because he was a mid-level heavyweight. He could have maybe made 205 at some point, you know, if he was of that mentality, but he never was, you know. So because of that, I think, you know, you're talking about a special athlete first, but I think you're talking about a guy who was grounded in good training. You know, at the end, you know, when you consider Sambo and jiu-jitsu and you know, you've got to say that Fedor was a high-level practitioner that came and succeeded here.
Absolutely.
And I think he carried that with him. I think he liked being a Russian and a Sambo practitioner and representing that. And I think that motivated him a lot too, you know, in the early days. Now, I think he's motivated by money and the whole thing. But yeah, I think he's got a martial artist mentality, and I think, you know, that carries its weight in MMA.
But surely he doesn't need the money, right?
Look, you never know. I think, like I said, he was a smart guy, and I think he made good money. I think he's hopefully taking care of his family and stuff like that. Every indication is that he is. But, you know, at the same time, you know, money begets money. When someone's going to offer you, when someone's going to offer you a good, you know, if someone's going to offer him a job and say, look, we'll pay you $200,000 a year, you got to show up 9 to 5 every day and teach. He could say, no, I'll pass. You know, it's 9 to 5 every day. You know, but hey, you know, train. Give me 3 months of training, show up for a fight, and go home with $10 million. You know, it becomes harder to say no. So I think, and you know, there comes a point where, you know, you can see it in the NBA too. You know, your NBA guys, you walk in the door, you're making $1 million, right? But and this touches the early part of our conversation with Chuck. $1 million, $5 million, eat what it needs to be. And this has changed very fast in the last few years, very, very quickly. You know, it's not what it is.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to frugally and, you know, pay a $600, $800 rent a month, and, you know, go to the supermarket and buy your, you know, food cook for yourself and stuff like that, you could probably squeak by on $1 million, you know, and live your life. Invest a little bit, you know, work a little and stuff like that. But it's not what my dad's $1 million was, or your daddy's $1 million.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So now you could be a millionaire. You could be, you know, at what point now I think the threshold is the billion, right? Is being a billionaire. But at what point are you a real mover and a real player? And that's getting the more money is. So, you know, Fedor could be at home, and I'm talking about in just ways that you don't even think about, you know. Fedor's at home, he's a bit of a celebrity. Someone says to him, hey, you know, I noticed that you were, you know, into cartoon drawing, and they're about to shut down the school over here. Can you give us help and keep the school open? Sure, we'll put up a building. Hey, get some money in there, you know, philanthropy, you know, those types of things. You can never turn down those types of paydays, or it's hard to turn down those types of paydays.
Right, and Fedor is actually pretty well known for being a philanthropist and kind of being that guy too, right? I mean, he's a humanitarian and on just about every level, as far as I've ever heard. Is that basically true?
Look, I'll tell you this. I think you're talking about one of the most complete human beings I've met in a long time, because as advanced as he is on the physical end, I always found in the brief interactions I had with him and in the brief translations and things I had with him, I was found to be one of the smartest and most cerebral guys. Even smarts is hard to describe, but he was a guy who used his head.
Yeah.
And, that also made him very, very dangerous. So
extreme humility.
So I'm impressed. But yeah, I think he likes his. I think at the end of the day, humility gets tailored with, $10 million paydays are nice.
He probably looks at it and goes, shit, I'm okay. I think with a guy that's that smart, he knows himself well enough to know, I'm okay. So hey, listen, I think that pretty much wraps up everything we had to talk about for this one. So having said that, we're signing off for now. Subscribe, hit the subscribe button below. If you don't subscribe, you can't watch all the cool fights we're going to put on, because you have to subscribe to watch those. Namaste. Tell Mittens we said hi, Miguel.
She asked me to give her 9 inches and make it hurt, so I fucked her 3 times and punched her in the mouth.
That's because you're from like an inferior gene pool, so you always have like this complex around yourself. You're not comfortable.